You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hey, happy Monday to you all. I am Doug Draper with my partner in crime, Pete Mento, and we want to welcome you to Global Trade This Week. It comes to you every Monday, 11 o'clock Mountain, 1 o'clock Eastern, and we're excited. This show's produced by Cap Logistics, so as always, visit caplogistics.com. And we were just talking off air that we're going to get Keenan, who pushes the button and turns the levers on this thing to make it all happen. I'm going to be out once or twice this upcoming week or upcoming month, so he's gonna jump in, and that's going to be a rip-roaring show. I'll tell you what, Pete. What do you think about that change in hosting services?
Well, I don't know if I can perform without you, Doug. I'm just going to be honest. So I'm glad Keen will be hanging out with me. Talking about what is it these kids talk about today? Pokemon
Go,
anime. Maybe what we'll do is we'll put my 15-year-old daughter on with Keenan, and we'll see what they want to talk about with trade. I don't think my daughter would have much to say. I can hear Keenan now, but should we have currency concerns about what's going on between Singapore and Australia right now? And just sitting there saying, have you read the new Teen Titans Go issue? Because I think it was pretty awesome.
I love
That's
it.
about what that was sound like.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's good. So we'll be just for our viewer knowledge, Monday the 5th we're off, but we'll be back on Tuesday the 6th, and then Keenan will be taking over my duties on Monday, July 12th. So we'll get to that housekeeping a little bit later. But Pete, let's get this party started. 2 topics. What is your first one, my friend?
Yeah, my first one is I don't know if I'd call this, is it semantics or more a question of vocabulary? But it seems that, we often have a lot of interesting consultant speak that goes on in our particular industry, Doug, whether it's blockchain, or, consolidation and all the other things and words that come up. But the latest term du jour that we seem to have to slap on everything is e-commerce. Do you have an e-commerce platform? Do you have an e-commerce solution for that? And I think what I'm getting more and more used to the fact is that everything is e-commerce now. I think it might be time for us to drop the E, my friend. I think we should just stop using E. We should start calling it commerce. Now, if you want to call it direct-to-consumer fulfillment, or, is it just a broader application of small package and how we're managing it? Maybe that's a better way of looking at it. But this idea that there's a whole separate type of industry where consumers are buying things called e-commerce, I think is a little passé. I think at this point in 2021, the idea that there is some technology revolution that we should be applying to the way that commercial transactions are happening and calling it e-commerce is a little ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, this show's been on for, has it been a year yet?
No, not quite. We're in season 2 though, but not a year.
Yeah. Feels like forever. But, and we probably don't go more than a couple of weeks without getting deep into a topic about the digitization of retail in America. This is what it is. You buy your groceries online now. For about 20% of the U.S. population, they do it at least once a month. They're buying groceries or something that they would have normally bought at the grocery store online. This is how it's going to be. And this is how it's going to go. It's time to drop that E, my friend, and just start calling it commerce.
I like it. Yeah, I think there's always going to be some sort of designation between the different modes of how people consume and purchase, right? So I would agree that the e-commerce is passé, as you had indicated, but I think that it'll still be used as direct-to-consumer or things of that nature to kind of see the spending habits and different options for analytics and analysis. But you're right, it's a term that is probably done with moving forward. I'll be interested, Pete, I'll throw this back to you on this one, is how does the e-commerce relate on an international scope, with the de minimis going up to 800, and, when my daughter orders anything online, I'm like, double check the website and do some behind the scenes assumptions, because this may be coming directly from China and you're going to see it in a month. not in 2 days.
Right.
So what's your take on that as far as the international spin of quote unquote? I was going to say e-commerce, but how about direct to consumer?
I'm going to say it gets bigger and bigger, and it continues to grow at an exorbitant rate. And as that happens, we begin to get smarter and smarter about how we manage the use of online digital tools to make the business easier and better. Things like PO management at a smaller retail level, not even mid-tier size companies, smaller companies, being less than $500,000 a year of top line revenue, being able to use things like PO management, better inventory tools that have been developed specifically with them in mind. Taxation tools, payment tools. I was on a call today where we were talking about many of the taxation changes that are happening in Europe and how really no one's preparing for them. You're going to see whole cottage industries rising up, creating simple, iOS solutions and Android solutions for companies to use on these many platforms that are currently available, like Shopify and such, to help to expedite their ability to sell these goods. I think you're going to see more and more digitization to help companies and individuals to just jump into that global marketplace. I think that as long as you have retailers with deep pocketbooks and private equity firms who are willing to purchase them and try to remodel them, I don't see them going away. I think maybe we might have advertised the death of big retail a little too soon. I think they do have some advantages that allow them to enter the marketplace in a way, particularly brand name just alone, that gives them a bit more of a distinction early on in this e-commerce landscape or re-commerce landscape, whatever we're going to call it, that these smaller companies simply don't have that.
Yeah, that's almost like the dispersion that we've talked about, getting these smaller companies the ability to bypass the need to sell their services through retailers or even Amazon Marketplace and disperse that power to the individual consumer. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, you make a good point there, Doug. There are basically 10 companies, maybe less than that, maybe 8 companies that really control all of global e-commerce. And 6 of them, maybe even 4 of them are Chinese, and they're the biggest. So the most international e-commerce, and most e-commerce is outside of the United States, is a marketplace. It's not being done on the Amazons of the world. It's a marketplace where products are available for sale and individual buyers are able to find and identify them through their own searching. The Amazons of the world have not taken foot as well as they have in the United States. And I think that is a model that will probably expand itself as more and more retailers get tired of paying for that infrastructure that Amazon so easily provides for them. So as companies are able to provide that infrastructure outside of the Amazon safe haven, if you will, it's just so easy to work with Amazon, but you're paying for that ease of use. Yeah. So as people come up with different ways of building an infrastructure, I think you're right. You're going to see more and more companies walking out of that and kind of creating their own opportunities outside of that easy infrastructure.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, hey, we're going to jump from direct to consumer, because Pete, I'm officially no longer using the term e-commerce, into connectors, right? And what I mean by that is that to move the product, to move merchandise and products throughout the stages of the delivery and the supply chain, right? So let's think of origin in another country, China, Vietnam, wherever. It's on a boat, but every time it changes mode or whatever, there's a connector, meaning a port, a rail terminal, a LTL terminal, a warehouse for the direct-to-consumer shipments. And the biggest thing that we've talked about, Pete, is that you can speed the mode from one connector to the other, but until the connectors, the warehouse, the transload, the area where things come in and are sorted and moved out, until that is fixed, the supply chain problems are not going to go away as far as speed to market and speed to the consumer. However, I'm trying to stay positive this year, Pete, and I want to give a shout out because there is one mode of transportation that I've seen that is starting to understand that and do something about it versus just complain or cut off customers, and that would be in the air cargo market. I just read last week that there's some new freight terminals popping up outside of JFK, and that we spoke about in the past that there's some cargo-only airports that are coming around, and the chaos at the airport is being pulled away into areas outside of the gateway cities. So the new terminals at JFK, we've talked about cargo-only hubs in Dallas, Columbus, Ohio, the one that was just released or just opened up outside of Chicago. So my point is that air freight is recognizing that you can move something from point A to point B very, very quickly, but if you don't have the ability to get it through the connector and transition it to the next line of mode, it doesn't make a shit of difference, because it doesn't make any difference. So what air freight has done is, by nature, air freight requires a faster transit. You're using air freight for a reason, right? And so kudos to the air freight industry, the package handlers, the consolidators, to realize we got to get the heck out of the congestion, and we got to set up our own shop, and we got to do it right now so we can keep our mode and our products moving. The question I have is, how long will it be until the ground connectors realize that and open up into additional sort centers or expand the hub and spoke model? But air freight's starting to figure it out, but that's a small portion of how things move through the network and through our lives. So anyway, this whole point on this topic, Pete, is I'm giving kudos to the air freight industry for kind of realizing that connectors are a major bottleneck, and they need to get out of the bottleneck and try something new.
Yeah, that's a great point you're making, Doug. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing them do it is because of the level of incremental costs that they face. It's expensive to operate a plane, and it's expensive to operate a plane not just because of the cost of it, but the repairs, jet fuel, the amount of insurance associated with it, the cost and the expense of the individuals who operate inside of it, the crews that are associated with it. Airports are very expensive. In many cases, the taxes that these companies pay to operate on them. The incremental cost of running an aircraft from one place to another is incredibly expensive. You got to get smart about those connectors, about the parts that are in between, and looking for ways to make it less expensive. I think you might have stumbled upon the reason why they've done it, right? The next one to do it will most likely end up being ships. Also, very expensive to operate. You have everything from liability concerns all the way down to repairs, the cost of building the ships themselves. You have the labor issues involved as well. I think where it gets fascinating, though, is when you start to look at the tractor trailers. Incrementally, are they as expensive to operate? Probably not. The area that they operate on is not maintained by them directly. It is through their tax dollars. But is it operated directly by as a cost of goods sold? I'm not sure. And they have limited ability to control that, which sucks because they really need upgrades and they need things to get better. Also, where they pick up and where they drop off their goods is absolutely out of their hands. Many of those terminals are their customers or their customers' customers, and they can't work on how you can deal with congestion there. And then rail, of course. Rail does control both sides of that. So that's a fascinating one to take a look at as well. But I think you were right when you were talking about it, that cost has a lot to do in factoring in on making that decision to get engaged, because they can control some of it, but not all of it, and the stakes are so high financially.
Yeah. Good point. All right, Pete, you got a busy week. I'm shifting over what we call halftime. You got some cool stuff going on at the end of this week on July 2nd. Give us a recap again. Let our audience know. This is a big deal. We've talked about it a couple times, but refresh the audience of what you got going on.
So July 2nd for The Economist magazine. Yes, The Economist magazine, not that other Economist magazine, although I don't know if there is another one, but like The Economist magazine. This particular Economist, the one all of you like to follow on LinkedIn for the fart jokes, is going to be giving a panel along with my good friend Captain Alex Ohanoff and some other specific guest stars discussing marine safety as it pertains to cybersecurity and cyber threats. Amazing opportunity for me and for all the panel members to talk about what's going on really directly as it pertains to the industry's reaction to this threat and how partnerships can make it better, the way that money's being invested, intellectual property is being invested. It's an amazing topic. And there'll be a live question and answer afterwards for individuals. This is all free. The Economist, in a very kind gesture, is not charging. And if you look at the people who are speaking at this, the entire event is just chock full of incredible speakers. So that's something definitely to be taking a look at. I wanted to bring up Trade Geek and also Trade School this week. Trade Geek podcast, that will be dropping tomorrow. The last one with Captain Alex Ohanoff, the number of downloads is positively ridiculous. That one went very well. Thanks everyone for listening. But this week, I am going solo because nobody wants to be on it, Doug. No one wanted to tackle this topic with me because they're too afraid to talk about it.
All right.
But yeah, essentially, I am saying out loud what a lot of people think, which is that customs should not be part of DHS. And as a matter of fact, customs should not be mixed up with Border Patrol. We should put customs back under Treasury and get them back to their original job. That their mission is too broad, that they are spread too thin, and they need to get back to what they originally were meant to do. So I throw a lot of statistics at it. I say a lot of uncomfortable things, and I talk about it's not. I couldn't do it in 2 or 3 minutes here with you. I have to really get into the weeds. And for those of you who think this is me beating up on customs in that podcast, it is not. I lay out the reason why it's in customs' best interest for the mission they're trying to do for them to get back to it. And then on Trade School this week, we are going to get into the shortage question once and for all. How did it happen? How did we get here? And what's it going to take to deal with what just feels like global shortages on everything from diapers to the raw materials for plastics, man. Well, that'll be Friday at 11 o'clock. But what about you, Doug? What do you got going on this week, bud?
Yeah, so since we are just plugging our shows, right, I guess that's what we're doing this week is we got some good Uptime Logistics is going to do a interview about the lumber industry. You mentioned shortages on a broader scale. We're going to dive in and talk about the lumber shortage and why, how it may have started years ago, not necessarily with the rebirth of the Roaring '20s, and really dive into that with some folks up in Canada, that have a lot to do with the lumber industry up there. So I'm pretty stoked about it. It'll be a good one. We'll drop it probably right after the 4th of July and right after Canada Day on July 1st. So that's what Uptime's got going on.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. A couple of geeks like us. And Pete, there's nothing that you say that makes me feel uncomfortable anymore, right? We've been doing this for too long. And as we mentioned, the pre and post conversations we have that are not on air, we would be, anyway, talk about feeling comfortable in uncomfortableness. You've helped me come to terms with that.
You're welcome, bud. You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, number 2.
That'll do it. Halftime from our good friends at Cap Logistics, who somehow are comfortable with us making each other uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keenan. And with that, so there's my second topic for today. Controversial, I'm sure, and I'm going to go right at it. There are a lot of people in the press right now who think that we are at peak inflation. So if you start to look at the financial press right now, there are people who are saying that we are at the height of inflation as we are probably going to see it. They don't like to see us go anywhere past 3%, but we're nudging at the 5s these days. But it did come down a bit. We did see it higher in April and in May, and it's coming right down back now for the consumer price index. And there are a number of economists who believe that the factors of resupplying the world's economy and that just good old-fashioned supply and demand, that people were able to charge more for goods that normally would have cost less simply because there was a normal supply for it. They were taking advantage of a slower marketplace, that caused prices to increase. And that with global economic shortages, they were taking advantage of a marketplace, and that we are seeing the inflationary pressures from that perspective, and that we are probably mixing that with normal inflationary pressures, and that through the year 2021 and the first quarter of 2022, those will continue, and that we will see on the other end of that a return to inflationary normalcy. And this is making some people feel like we should keep pressure on China with these tariffs, that we should keep interest rates low, that, don't buy gold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I I call bullshit and all that. There is no way that you can't look at the fact that there are no unemployment in the state of New Hampshire is at 2.4%. As of right now, right? So as of our recording right now, that means that for every 100 people that live in the state of New Hampshire, that there are less than 3 of them that are actively seeking a job. There is a $1,200 starting bonus to go to work at Dairy Queen. Man, they're paying $15 an hour. You're going to have increasing wages on people who really can take their pick of any service job over the summer. When those summer jobs end, you're going to have a return to manufacturing jobs and other jobs as the economy continues to regain steam. So that's going to mean people are going to have more money to purchase things, and a return to normalcy. I just, every other indication is that you're going to see inflation continue. And I don't believe in my heart of hearts that we're at the end of this thing, man. It just seems preposterous, Doug, that this is peak inflation. Yeah. 7%, 8%, I don't know. But I mean, we seem like we're kind of in new ground here. This could get really nuts. Yeah. And if they think this is peak inflation, maybe it could be crazier than any of us ever thought, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that next week we need to come up with topics where we disagree, because I couldn't agree with you more, right? And I think, I mentioned that the Roaring 20s, that's going to continue throughout the 2021 into 2022. So I don't see any, what is going to change that says we're at peak? I mean, we're just at the beginning of this thing, man. We're starting to shift into not even third gear. We're kind of revving the engine in second gear before we drop it down. So we got a lot of runway going on. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, this was just something I thought of whenever we were prepping for the show, is that there's so many metrics and traditional measures that define inflation that may just get blown up. Because if you look at the stock market fluctuations, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, if the stock market fluctuated $400 or 400 points in a day, people would freak out. Now it's like page 9 of the news, so to speak, right? And then, and you got a fake currency that's got a picture of a dog on it that, has real value that was just made up. I mean, who would have thought? Craziness. So I agree 100% that the consumption is not going to stop. Prices are going to still go up, and the traditional metrics in which we define inflation, just based on the craziness of the metrics that we used to think were important, like a 400-point swing in the stock market, or who would have thought a freaking dog on a coin would be where it is today. So I don't know, man, but I'm agreeing 100%. This isn't over by any stretch.
No, I think that people who are making financial decisions based on that, they must know something that we don't. But all I can tell you is people like you and I that are in this business, folks are making decisions on buying transportation for things that they're going to be selling 4, 5, 6 months from now. And there's no room. There's no room. There's no space. We are buying everything we can because we have an expectation that people are going to be buying everything they get their hands on. And that is an indication of people having more money they know what to do with. Pricing pressures going up. I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. All right, Doug, this is number 4. Man, take us home.
All right. This one's a little more simple. When I sit down with you, Pete, and we have these discussions, I'm like, man, Pete is incredibly smart and complex type of things. And I'm just this simple kid from Kansas that kind of looks at it from black and white. So this one's a little bit, I wouldn't say dumbed down, but this is just pretty much blocking and tackling, and it relates to the recent spike in rail traffic. And my comment to that is what did you expect, right? It's like, duh. If you sit and watch the flow of goods from where it's manufactured to the end consumer, all of the touching points. First, it starts on the ocean, and I'm generalizing here, right? But it starts to get over here on a boat. Hey, 2-3 months ago, the world was imploding because we had hundreds of boats off the coast of California. And then what happens? It gets into a connector and it's got to be unloaded. Then there's all these things about the port and COVID and things are stuck. And then the next couple of weeks later was all about trucking and there's driver shortage and we don't have enough equipment. That's just the flow of the goods through the system. And oh, by the way, rail, which is the slowest of the means as it gets into the United States, shocker, all of a sudden there's rail surges, right? Okay, so it's pretty self-evident. And the solution for the rail traffic is let's speed up our trains and improve communication, which goes back to my point that on topic number one. It doesn't matter how fast you get to the party. If there's a line to get in, and it doesn't solve the problem. So I appreciate the fact that we're trying to speed trains. I think that's great. But it's still the connectors. And the point of this topic, Pete, is that the rail is now seen surging in volume. I'm kind of like, what else did you expect, right? So here's my take. If you follow the same logic, and what happens to consumer goods after they finally get it? They return it. So I think you're going to see press releases and conversations and topics about, oh my God, there's so much product coming back. There's nowhere to put it. The warehouses are too full. What are they doing? So I think the next big surge in what the media is going to focus on is, oh my God, there's so many returns going on in the world. What do we do? Perishable, non-perishable. And then I think equipment repositioning is going to be another big one. And we talked about that last week with exports in the farming industry. And I think in the fall, when there's harvest, there's going to be a huge amount of talk about there's no equipment to get this product out of here. So anyway, rail traffic is now spiking. Didn't see that one coming for miles.
Yeah. And not only that, man, they're acting like what you just talked about, which is the harvest season coming, like that's 3 years from now. It's not. It's just a few months from now.
Yeah. And
this entire post-pandemic supply chain plan has been, we'll just deal with it when we deal with it, right? Ever since the pandemic, the whole world has had an attitude of, let's just cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
Let's just deal with that when it happens because we're in crisis mode, right? Let's just deal with it right now. Well, now all those decisions are coming to fruition. All those crazy things that we kind of had to deal with because we were managing a global health crisis. Well, now the check's coming in, right? Mm-hmm. Now the fact that we couldn't put anybody on planes because we had to deal with that. And there wasn't any air cargo for a long, long time. Well, now that's caught up with us and bit us in the ass. The fact that we had to close ports for a long time because of COVID, that caught up with us. The fact that we had to do blank sailings for a long, long time, that caught up with us. What happened in the Suez Canal, that caught up with us. Like, they're all these little things are catching up with us. And we're like, okay, well, I guess we're crossing that bridge now. And when it comes to rail, it moves so slow, like you said. Who could have seen this coming? Anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody at all, because trains are super, super long, and you should be able to see it coming, man. So you're right. That harvest is going to really be a real pain in the ass. And then also, how do we move containers generally back to where they're going? We move them on rail a lot of times, and particularly empties. How are they going to get back there? The infrastructure for rail right now is it's a function of the success of everything else. People are saying we'll move it any way we can. If you could find a bunch of healthy teenagers with bicycles and move the container across country, they'd probably do it right now. And I think you know a couple. They would probably pay them to do it. Rail is just as busy as everything else, man. And they're going to be chock-a-block when people need to move this stuff back. They're going to say, well, I got paying customers that I'm charging a whole lot of money to. Yeah. You want to move some empties? You're going to pay about, I don't know how many times more you normally would. So get out that checkbook and let's party.
Yeah.
It's not going to be pleasant, man.
Yeah.
It's not going to be pleasant.
Yeah, it's just we're not through this by any stretch on all different facets. So
we should do that, Doug. Actually, we shouldn't. We've been way too depressing lately, but we should write down all of those things that we as an industry made as decisions where we're like, we'll deal with that when we have to. And just write all those down and see what, because there were a ton of them, man. And rail definitely got beat up by it.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Well, I'll just say that I'm looking over here. I'm old school. I don't look down on my computer or my phone. I look at a wall calendar over here that I still have. So, July 5th, Monday, we're not on. July 6th, we will be. But take us home, my friend.
Yeah. I really appreciate the opportunity to close out this one, Bud, because 4th of July is probably one of my all-time favorite holidays for so many reasons. July 4th, of course, allowed Alexander Hamilton to come up with the concept of the U.S. Customs Service. One of the first things that we did as a nation was establish the ability of our government to tax imports, which would ultimately someday give me a career. So, I mean, that's just so wonderful. And also the ability for us to have duty drawback. But I think more importantly than anything, as much as we might complain and argue and swap ideas back and forth, the two of us absolutely love this country and all the opportunities that it's given us. And I hope everyone out there has a chance over this long weekend to, in whatever political stripe and in whatever idea you have as a business person and a trader, to take a moment and think about how fortunate you are to be involved in trade, transportation, logistics, and business in this great country of ours. Doug, I'm telling you, man, nothing is more fun for me than talking about those issues with you. So thank you again for a great week, and I can't wait to see you again next week, bud.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Take care. See you, Pete.
Yeah. Thanks, Keenan. Bye, everybody. Peace.